Okay, hello everyone, this is Fidemaster Victor Newstroev. Let's start our newest course. This is a series of group lessons devoted to game planning. Our task is to master your ability to come up with a proper plan. And this course consists of 12 lessons, and each lesson has a separate topic. For example, today we are going to talk about planning in general. So, for example, why playing with a plan is better than playing without a plan, what kind of plans you have, how to come up with a plan, and so on. And I prepared the presentation that I would like to share with you. This one, let me put it to the center. Yeah, now you can see it. Okay, so first of all, a definition of a plan. A definition of a plan. What a plan means. A plan is a series of moves which allows us to achieve a certain goal, and disrupting the enemy plan can be a plan too. So what we are doing when we are talking about the plan, we are looking at the position, think about our next steps, and the goal of these next steps should be either make our position better or create problems to our opponent. If we see that our opponent is going to create serious problems to our position, then disrupting the enemy plan is definitely a good plan. Fine. Well, what else? So when you play with a plan, all the moves that you are making on the board, they are subordinated to a single goal that you are trying to achieve. So, and when your pieces are doing one specific thing together, we can say that you fully take advantage of your pieces coordination. So that's why when you do a plan, you let all your pieces to participate, or if not all, then most of your pieces to participate. Even having a bad plan is better than playing without plan, because well, having a bad plan means that you don't have a right goal. You have a wrong goal, but anyway, your pieces are coordinated all together, and because of that, you are ready to change this plan once you think that you have to, because your opponent is about to like attack you on the queen side or invade your camp and so on, but your pieces are already coordinated, and all together they can defend your position. So how to come up with a plan? Before you come up with a plan, you should evaluate the position, of course. And well, it's necessary to evaluate the position. There is a procedure to evaluate, and I'm sure you are familiar with it. I was explaining it on workshops, webinars. It is shown in my course, the one on Chessable, evaluate before you calculate. We also did it at individual classes, at some group classes too. So these are criteria that we use to evaluate the position. We compare everything: material ratio, immediate threats, how well the kings are placed, and how your opponent or you can execute an attack or not. Who controls the open files? What about the pawn structure? Are there any weaknesses or even pawn weaknesses? Who controls the center? Who has extra space on which side, and so on? And of course, finally, development and arrangement of pieces, which typically means pieces coordination. But when you thinking about the plan, doing through these 7 criteria is too time-consuming approach. That's why what I want you to do is to think about only 3 specific things. So you should identify the strengths and the weaknesses in your position and your opponent position. Maybe you should also figure out if there are any unique features of the position. Something that tells you that doing this plan is definitely a good decision. For example, the enemy king is exposed, attacking such a king is a good idea. Or the enemy king is in the center, his pieces are not developed, and you are well developed, so opening the center is a good idea and a good plan too. And then you should decide what exactly you should do to improve your position or to worsen your position. So these three key aspects that you need to go through. So identify your strengths and weaknesses, yours and of your opponent. Then decide what are these, if there are any unique features of the position that can give you a hint of what plan to execute. And also decide how exactly you improve your position, or if you want to make the enemy position worse, then also how exactly. Okay, so Francois, I don't mind if I think you don't mind if I mute you. You can unmute at any moment and ask any questions if you want. I just want to get rid of any background noise. Okay, also, when you are trying to come up with a plan, you should consider two different types of advantages: static and dynamic advantages. So what is this? Well, maybe you already know. Static are the ones that cannot be changed in the nearest future. For example, the pawn structure, if, for example, the pawns are blocked, or material advantage if one of the players has like extra pawn, you're unlikely to lose it in the nearest future, only if you make significant mistake. And there are dynamic advantages. These may disappear. What are they? Initiative, or pieces activity, or the king. For example, you see the enemy king is weak, this is your advantage, but if you let him spend a few tempi on bringing defensive resources to the king or just shelter the king, then he is fine, and such advantage may disappear. And pieces development. So if your opponent has undeveloped pieces and you, instead of opening the position and punish him for that, you, for example, play some slow strategy, then this advantage may disappear. Okay, what else you can what other static and dynamic advantages you know? For example, a bishop pair, is it static or dynamic? Well, you can just type S or D. So a bishop pair, static or dynamic. Okay, so it's static. Exactly. How is it static? Well, because you are likely to have this bishop pair, and the situation may change only if you decide to exchange this bishop pair. It cannot be dynamic. The activity of this bishop can be dynamic. So, for example, if uh, let's say you keep your bishop passive, then, or you would just keep them where they are, and your opponent finds a way how to blockade the activity of your pieces, then, or of your bishops, then yes. But the bishop pair itself is a static advantage. You're likely to have the bishop pair even in the endgame. Okay, what else? What kind of advantage you also know? Let's say outpost. Having an outpost. Is it static or dynamic? So you have an outpost into the enemy territory occupied with your piece, or you're going to occupy it with your piece. So Brian thinks it's static. That's right. Nothing gonna happen with this outpost. If it's the outpost, your opponent is unlikely to attack it with the pawn, so maybe with his pieces only, but then you can still occupy it. It's a static advantage. Okay, so what else? Okay, let's say a far advanced pawn into the enemy camp, which is not really protected well. It's a disadvantage, definitely, but static or dynamic? So this one is dynamic. Why? Well, it can be both, but usually it's dynamic because you can bring your pieces to support such a pawn. Okay, fine. So we practiced, and based on these factors, you have to come up with a plan. Let me show you an example. For example, your pieces are better coordinated. What should you do? Open the position, give them more space. So that's why you see, okay, my pieces are better coordinated, they are closer to the center. What should I do? Open the position in the center by initiating a pawn exchange, because this is likely to provide my pieces with more freedom to move with extra room, and pieces coordination will decide the game. If, let's say, you see that there are enemy pawns doubled and weak, doubled and isolated on a semi-open file, what you do? Again, the plan is easy. Bring your rook to that file and try to attack this pawn, or at least try to blockade them. So based on these advantages, type of the advantages, you decide which plan you should execute. Okay, so finally the last slide, it's a three-step thinking model. Every time, on every move, you don't really have to evaluate the position every single time. So you should evaluate the position maybe like from 5 to 10 times during the game. But you always have to go through this three-step thinking model. On every move, you should think, okay, so what threats does my opponent have? How can I improve my position? And what move should I make? And answering the second and the third one, these two questions, or one of them, may allow you to come up with a proper plan. Okay, fine. So we are done with this. I'm going to send you this presentation. Let's now go to the direct analysis. Here we have the game fragment. Alexei Suetin was playing against Vladimir Antoshin. And what can we say? Well, here in this position, we can play on both sides of the board. It's white to move. What can you say about the position? So white to move, and it's their turn. So what would you suggest for white, and how do you evaluate the position? Any suggestions? So, guys, you can unmute yourself and suggest anything. Okay, so Brian thinks that white wants to may capture on b6. Okay, fine. Does it mean that white is better in your opinion? Oh, really? But mhm. uh, the rook on the g file looks better because there is an attack in your opinion, right? Uh-huh. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, well, that plan was played in the game. That's right. So you think it's equal approximately, or what? Or you think that after? Mm-hmm. So, like losing a pawn, but getting a compensation. Okay, fine. Well, anybody else wants to share his opinion? Erosh thinks that f6 and b6 are weaknesses. Okay, fine. Good point. Yes, well, b6 is a weakness for sure. The question is whether white wants to take it right away or not. And what else? Well, what else we can say about the position? So Brian mentioned that there is a possibility to do the attack, which is possible, right? And even the back rank threats, and you will be surprised, but all that stuff happened in the game, but actually only because white chose a wrong plan, a bad plan. So actually, let's try to evaluate this position. Well, objectively, black should be losing, and I'm going to explain why. Well, what they can do? Oh, they have all these are weaknesses. B6, f6, f5, d5. They can hardly move their pieces. So moving this knight means knight b6 with a temper. Then d5 falls. Then the b pawn becomes a passed pawn. Well, the only thing that black should rely on is the attack on the king side on g2. And what they need are such moves like f4 and queen g7 or bishop h3 with a pressure on g2. Having in mind, for example, if it's f4 and bishop h3, they take. No, let's say there is a knight, so knight takes and then queen g4. So queen comes to g4, threatening g2, and there is no way to defend. So something like that. This is the only hope for black, doing this attack. But this attack can be easily parried if instead of capturing this pawn, white first prepares his position and then captures the pawn at the very best moment. White didn't do it in the game. Instead, he was greedy, captured the pawn immediately, not really thinking about his future. But what plan could he do? So queen e3. Why queen e3? So yeah, well, he can take there later because yeah, not only, but let me explain. So the b6 pawn can be captured later because there are no pieces that can protect it. The queen has to defend the bishop on e6, so the queen cannot go neither to b7 nor to a7. Queen a3, you stop f4 with such a move, and you threaten the bishop. So let's say queen here, how do they play? They need to make a bishop move with bishop f7. I don't think it's a promising position, because then you can take on b6. There is no queen h3, there is no bishop h3, no queen g7, no f4. So actually the best move is to react with queen g7, threatening mate. g3, bishop d7. The bishop retreats to a better position, but then rook c7 pin and black pieces are tied down. Let me show you. So doing this would work perfectly well. So g3, there is no f4, this is stopped. Even if the h-pawn goes there and, for example, we don't take it with the knight, it's still not sufficient to capture on g3 and expose the king. The back rank is weak, but both files are under the white's control. And even if knight b6, rook b6 happens, and then black continues with rook c8, it's completely fine if white continues with rook to c6, offering a rook trade. Okay, so right now the bishop is hanging. Bishop d7, rook c7 making a pin. So rook e8, let's say. Queen b3 attacking d5. Now f4 makes no sense, just queen d5. Well, what to play? Rook e7, let's say. Then queen d5. Then queen d5. So, and this is losing because a lot of things. So this is coming, this is coming. Just any queen move and the d pawn is coming too. Maybe it's better just to play something like queen f7 to defend. What would you suggest for white here? No suggestions? Look at the pawn on b5, what this pawn can do. I'm sure Brian may come up with a move. Yeah, for white. Because you often make similar moves. Uh-huh, uh-huh. Okay, okay, so you are almost correct. So it's 95. So it's a sacrifice, but the wrong one. Not on d7, because you can do this sacrifice later if you want. So, but 95 sacrifice. So you add pressure here. They cannot do rook e7. If rook e7, you just take and win a knight. They have to take. They have to accept it. But once they accept it, then these two pawns win the game. So c6 is coming, and then b6. So it was a sacrifice, but not not exchange sacrifice. It was knight c5. And yes, this knight is actually not participating in such a plan, right? So it's doing some defensive functions like covering e1 square, protecting this pawn, and potentially defending the king's position. So that was a correct plan. What white was required, he had to think about what black is going to do. And the black's plan with queen g7, with f4, with bishop h3, especially with f4, which already makes g3 problematic. So if, for example, you play g3 first and then you threaten something else and there is no f4, that's okay. But if f4 is played and then you play g3, then it's f takes, h takes, and the second pawn goes. Okay, just make sure that there is no 95 and some problem, some counter attack with after this move. Fine. The game continued with knight b6, which on the one hand looks logical, but allows black to get a counterplay. So the white's plan was to stop the white's proper plan was to stop the black's plan. Now what? Still, it's not too late to make a good move. White decided that it's time to play defensively. They played knight e1 to be able to bring the queen. It doesn't stop bishop h3, but still the queen there can stop queen g4, for example. That wasn't the best move. It was still possible to play rook c6, and after bishop h3, let's say g3. Now what? G takes, h takes. Seems to be not sufficient. So, because how to continue then? Because you cannot play queen g4, it's queen d5. You can try this move, but then it's knight e5. You can try queen f5 move to protect and to potentially to attack, but it's actually not doing such an attack. And that's why just b6 can be played. Bishop g7. Well, knight h4. Oh, I mean bishop g4, knight h4. And then this and then that. Or maybe rook c8. Okay, like that. So, for example, here you don't really have time. Even if you, let's say, do queen h4. And let's say that for some reason capturing there is a mistake. But it's completely not. Because, for example, this move, which allows to win a queen, still loses the game because then the b pawn is promoted. But let's say I don't take the queen, I just push the pawn further, and that's it. So this move, just take, then take the queen. But white plays too defensively, putting the knight to e1 on the one hand, that protects g1, on the other hand, it's a passive move. And that's why white no longer has these counterplay. It's too slow now to advance the pawn. Bishop h3 was played. Queen f3, preventing this move. Because if not queen f3, it's like bishop g2, knight g2, and then queen here, threatening g2. So that's why queen f3 was required. Queen e7 attacking there. And white, being under attack, like an ordinary club player, made a mistake in this position. So it was a grandmaster, but even him being under the attack couldn't withstand such a pressure and made a mistake here. So what do you think white should do, and what what they should do? Oh, here knight c3 is recommended, but what does it mean, knight c3? Ah, the knight from a4 to c3. Okay. King of uh, this is what was played in the game. So looks like it's a defensive move because the king goes away from the pin, protects the knight, but this move is actually a critical mistake here. It's still not too late to make a proper move and survive. So instead of king f1, what else you have? Well, the knight is hanging, and obviously you have to defend it, because if you don't defend it, then you lose the knight. If you move the knight, you lose on g2. So in both cases, it's completely losing. You have to defend the knight. But what else left if it's not king f1? So queen c3 cannot be bishop g2, knight takes g2, and queen goes that way to e4. Threatened mate. And I don't see how. No, queen h3, queen h3, queen b1, and it's checkmate. So what else left? f3, but then queen e2, and now you cannot protect it. The rook is not really doing much. Okay, so but queen d1 is a better move. So queen d1, then what? Now bishop g2 doesn't work so well, because then how to attack? If queen g7, it's queen f3. If you do it through e4, it's this. And now you don't have neither queen e2 nor queen c2 to add pressure. And this allows white to spend a few tempi and bring the rook back to the defense if it's needed. And this is how white would win. So here black has to capture on e3, g3, maybe bishop g4, and then black wins a pawn back, offers a queen straight, and maybe this can be a draw. It's still not an easy task for white to survive because of this passed pawn, but I'm sure now it's blockaded, and if the knight is either on b2 or on d3, it's okay. White can definitely get a draw. But they played king f1, and looks like it's a good move because the king protects this knight on e1, but absolutely not. Bishop g4. So you cannot take because of a checkmate. That's why queen d3. This is the only move, but now black does what? Rook e8 for sure. Rook e8 creates two threats to checkmate and to win a queen with bishop e2. Can it be played knight f3 in this position? It doesn't seem so, because after this move, what do they do? Take with a pawn? Because if they take with a queen, it's checkmate with queen e1. Now queen e1 is just a check, but then it's a bit unpleasant. After rook g1, the king has to go there, and it's a winning position. How exactly is it winning? Well, as you wish. We can deliver. No, we cannot. We can take the pawn, or we can play queen g1. What is better? I think they are equal, but let's do queen g1, okay? And then you threaten to deliver a check and take on h2, and there is no defense. Fine. So that's why queen d2. protecting and making bishop e2 a useless move. But f3. So g takes f3 loses the game. King g1 checkmate. If they block, it's possible to bring the rook back and still win. Maybe actually the queen back is better, because then queen g2 and the king cannot escape. So knight takes f3. Queen takes a pawn and threatens to take on f3. And there is no counter attack because the back rank is weak. So queen goes to d1. Queen b2. Rook takes f6. What would you play? Well, and then king g1. So if queen b5, it's king g1. And how to continue the attack then? Well, e4 is not an attack. I'm sure it's a playable position for black, but I'm not sure if it's completely winning. How can you win material or checkmate? The king is stuck on the first rank. The queen is there. So what you can do? Okay, bishop b5, d7, bishop b5. It looks stronger. Maybe they can already create an escape square for the king. Not sure if g3 is a good idea, but at least something. Okay, so the best move is just rook c8 with rook c1. Nothing can stop it. Yes, Eros suggested it finally. Because rook c6 is a blunder. It's a check, you lose a rook. And rook c1 is coming. So what they did is h3, but rook c1 took there, and it's game over. If rook takes b5, it's queen c4, winning the rook. So white resigned. Let's go back. So what did happen in this game? Black had a plan. Their only hope was to attack on the king side with f4, bishop h3, and maybe queen g7. And white is technically winning because of a huge number of weaknesses. What they should do is only prevent the attack of black. They could do it with queen e3, adding pressure on the bishop and controlling the f4 square. And the b6 pawn can be captured later, but because they were not playing with a plan, they were just playing the move, so they considered, okay, I win a pawn, and then I have a passed pawn. So I win a pawn, and then I promote it. So he was not looking at the whole picture of the game. He was mainly focused on something very, very concrete, on this pawn on b6 that actually could be captured at any moment of the game. There was no rush. And because of that, he simply got his pieces miscoordinated later in the game. For example, if you look at this position, look at black pieces. 3 pieces left. Usually they are not sufficient to checkmate. But this rook is out of the place of action, and that's why black dominates. So, and then black invades the enemy camp. If there was extra tempo and it was possible, let's say bringing the rook to e2, to e3, to e1 at least, then white would be fine. But with the rook being out of the place of action, they have real chances to lose the game.